Welcome back, travelers. I'm glad to see you made it. I'm Colo, and today I'm going to show you a beginner-friendly build for the Barbarian class in Baldur's Gate 3. This build is going to be focused on intuitive and accessible gameplay while still being very effective and fun to use. In order to achieve all of this, we're going to put a few rules in place for the build up front. Firstly, I won't be focusing on any specific racial bonuses or specific pieces of gear in this guide, because I personally think that you should choose whatever race you think fits the best for your character for roleplay, or just whatever you want your character to look like. As long as it's some variation of a sexy elf, you're good to go. And as far as gear goes, a true beginner of this game is not going to have a single clue what gear pieces the game has to offer. So how do you build a character around specific pieces of gear when you don't even know they exist? I don't want to ruin the surprise of every secret piece of gear for you in this beginner build, so we're just going to build something that doesn't have those requirements. I'm also going to avoid multi-classing this character altogether so that you can just pick up the class, level it all the way to max level, and gain all the benefits that specific class has to offer. For now though, let's take a closer look at the things you're going to get as you level up. We're going to build this character as a bare heart barbarian. This is going to turn you into one of the tankiest mofos in the land. You will be eating axes to the face for breakfast and coming back for seconds. First things first. Select Barbarian as your starting class. This is going to give you proficiency with every weapon in the game, as well as most armor pieces in the game, and shields. Be sure to avoid equipping heavy armor on your Barbarian, however, because it will mess up some of your class features if you do. Barbarians are not supposed to wear heavy armor. There is probably a niche or fringe case where it may be the best idea, but in general, you're going to want to try to avoid heavy armor on this character. You're going to gain the unarmored defense passive, which makes your Barbarian tankier if they're wearing no armor at all. So this might sound like it's a better idea not to wear armor, and in some cases it will be, because you'll find clothing that has specific bonuses on it that you might think are really good, whatever the case may be. But just know that if you are wearing one piece of armor, you will lose this bonus. So if you're going to wear any armor, you might as well wear a full set of armor. You're also going to receive the Rage ability, which is one of the most important defining features of the Barbarian class as a whole. Rage is an ability that can only be used in combat, and it will increase the damage you do, decrease the physical damage you take, and make you better at strength-related checks and saving throws. If that all sounds overwhelming, don't worry about what all that means. Just know that you are going to want to use Rage pretty much as often as you can in any combat situation. If you're just fighting one weak regular dude, maybe don't use your Rage, but if you're in an actual fight, you're going to want to be raging as your Barbarian. That's kind of the whole point of the class. You are the guy that gets pissed and smashes things. Let's go ahead and set up our character's stats like this to start with, and as we level up, we're going to focus on increasing our strength as much as possible. As far as which skill proficiencies you choose, it's really up to you, but I like to have perception, survival, nature, animal handling. Any of those things are going to help you out in the open world. These are not game-breaking choices, though. If you pick one, it's not really going to be a huge deal. Just choose whatever you want here. Level 2 gives you a nice passive skill that will help you avoid negative effects during gameplay, as well as reckless attack, which is another important Barbarian class feature. This allows you to gain advantage on all attack rolls until your Barbarian's next turn, but all attacks made against the Barbarian will also have advantage for that time. It's a reckless attack. You're putting yourself in danger to do more damage to your enemies. If you're brand new to D&D or Baldur's Gate 3's rule set, this might not sound like it's that good. Trust me when I tell you that it is freaking awesome and you're going to love it. The coolest part about it is that you don't even have to preemptively activate this effect before you attack. The game will actually tell you when you are about to miss an attack roll, and then you can decide if you want to click yes and use reckless attack, which may end up turning that miss into a hit, and then any other attacks you make in that same turn will also be made with advantage, so it helps you out quite a bit. You're going to love this thing. Level 3 is where we get to choose our subclass and bestial heart options. As we said before, we're going to go with the Wild Heart subclass, and we're going to choose the Bear Heart for the Bestial Heart option. This is going to change your rage into Rage Bear Heart. And the difference is, now when you're raging, instead of reducing all physical damage you take by 50%, this version reduces all damage you take by 50%, unless it is specifically psychic damage. So that means almost everything in the game that hits your barbarian now is reduced by 50% just right off the bat, which is crazy good, as you can probably imagine. So now, instead of just eating axes to the face for breakfast, now you're washing them down with a glass of acid on the side and loving every second of it. Delicious. Choosing the Wild Heart subclass is also going to grant you the Speak with Animals skill, which is hilarious and awesome, and it can actually help you out in quests. Just don't forget, every time you take a long rest, you're going to have to recast this on your barbarian, but it's amazing to have a character in your party that has Speak with Animals, because you can walk up to a squirrel and talk to him, you can walk up to a cat and talk to him, and sometimes they actually have good information for you, so it's very good to have. When you get to level 4, now that you've chosen your Bestial Heart option, you're going to notice that every time you level up from this point forward, there's going to be an option on the side of the screen that says Change Bestial Heart. This is a purely optional choice that you can make every time you level up this character. You are free to change it out and try out the other ones if you want to, but for this build, I'm going to leave it on Bear Heart for the entirety of the game. That way we keep our 50% damage reduction to all damage except for psychic. You are also going to be allowed to choose your first feat at this level. I'm going to choose ability improvement for this one and add 2 points to my strength. Not only does this make your attacks hit harder, but it actually increases your attack accuracy as well. I know that sounds strange to some of you, but that's how it works in this game. It also lets you carry more stuff and jump further. More strength on this character is always going to be a good thing. At level 5, you get extra attack, which allows you to attack twice per turn from now on. This is an insane damage buff, and it marks the beginning of the second stage of the game. From level 5 onwards, your combat experiences are going to get much crazier because your enemies are also able to make more attacks and use stronger spells. But don't worry, because you are definitely going to start feeling much stronger from this point on. You also get fast movement, which is a passive ability that lets you move further per turn as long as you are not wearing heavy armor. At level 6, you will get to choose your first animal aspect passive. Almost every single one of these is great to have, so I definitely recommend reading through them and choosing what sounds cool to you. But for the examples I'm going to use in this build, we're going to choose the aspect of the bear first. First of all, it fits with the theme that we're going for very well because we're doing a bear barbarian, so this makes sense. What it actually does is it doubles your barbarian's carrying capacity, and that basically means you can carry like up to 1,000 pounds of stuff on this one character. Great to have. For inventory management is one of the worst parts of this game for a lot of people, and being able to just send everything you pick up to the barbarian is one way to get around that. It also gives you advantage on all strength checks at all times instead of being limited to when you're raging. This means that you will be able to make use of this during conversations and other scripted events, not just in combat. And let me tell you, barbarians get some really good dialogue options in this game, so don't be afraid to use your barbarian as your conversation person at all. That's what I did in my first run. I ran a berserker barbarian, and there were tons of barbarian and berserker specific dialogue options. Some of them were hilarious, and I highly recommend, testing out each class during conversations to see which ones you think are the funniest. Level 7 gives you a passive bonus that drastically increases your likelihood of going first in every combat encounter and makes your barbarian immune to being surprised by enemies. Surprise is a very scary effect because it lets your enemies have an entire uninterrupted turn before you even get a chance to react at all. But now your Barbarian is 2 steps ahead of that bullshit, and it's not going to work on you anymore. At level 8, you will get another passive skill called Land Stride Difficult Terrain. This one makes your Barbarian much better at walking across difficult terrain, which would normally slow your movement speed by half when you're walking through it. From this point forward, it's not going to slow your Barbarian at all, but be aware that this does not make you immune to slipping on ice or grease as you walk through. So, don't go slip and sliding across the ice expecting to make it all the way across. You are still very likely to fall prone and lose the rest of your turn, which sucks, and you don't want this to happen. You also get to choose another feat at this level, which I'm going to use to put 2 more points in strength, which will bring us up to the maximum of 20. Yes, you can go over 20 by using special items and gear in the game, but you are not guaranteed to find those on your run. So for all intents and purposes, 20 is the maximum strength you can normally get. This also happens to be the strength requirement for picking up and throwing humanoid-sized creatures, like people. So now you can throw people at each other, which is hilarious and awesome. Level 9 grants you a passive increase to your critical strike damage, which is nice to have, and I'll gladly take it. At level 10, you get to pick another animal aspect from the list we saw earlier. For this build, I'm going to pick Aspect of the Elk. This grants you an aura ability, which will increase your movement speed and the movement speed of your party by 5 feet per turn, which may not sound like much, but it absolutely is. Movement speed is king in this game. It is offensive and defensive and will allow you to get closer to your victims much more effectively. Level 11 gives you the Relentless Rage passive, which makes you immediately regain 1 hit point the first time your health drops to 0 per short rest, as long as you were raging when it happened. That might sound stupid to a new player, but it's very important, and I'm going to tell you why. When you drop to 0 health in this game, you don't automatically die in most cases. Instead, you will enter a downed state, and your character is going to begin doing death saving throws. The important thing to know about this is that while a character is downed like this, any healing that they receive at all will instantly bring them back up to their feet and prevent them from bleeding out on the ground and dying. So basically, your Barbarian is so friggin' pissed that they can just decide not to die once per short rest. At 12th level, you'll get another feat. I'm going to suggest Savage Attacker here, as it is a very nice passive bonus to melee weapon attacks, and I don't know if you picked up on it by now, but that's pretty much all this character is going to be doing. You can alternatively put 2 points into Constitution, bringing it up to 18 and giving you more maximum health, but this character is already extremely tanky as they are, so you really don't need it if you just want to go with an offensive feat instead. So now that we've seen all the skills and abilities you're going to get as you level up, let's take a look at how the character actually plays. One of the first things you might notice is that my action bar is nearly empty. The main active abilities you'll be using will actually be granted to you by your choice of weapon. And luckily for us, this build is set up to allow for literally any weapon you find to be immediately equipped and used without having to respec or change anything about your Barbarian. As you're playing, if you find a cool axe, slap it on and chop some dudes up. If one of those dudes drops a spear and you want to try that out, swap the axe for the spear and commence with the stabbing. Also, do not be afraid to use a one-handed weapon and a shield, as this build does extremely well with that setup, and it will make you even more tanky than before. Do keep in mind though that while you absolutely can use any ranged weapons you find, because our dexterity is not that high, you will usually be better off just throwing a spear or an axe at your targets rather than trying to snipe them down with a bow. When deciding which weapons to throw, make sure that you look down here in the bottom and make sure that the weapon has the thrown property, as you can see here. This will allow you to treat it as an actual throwing weapon rather than just some nonsense you picked up and chucked across the room, which can also be effective, don't get me wrong. The name of the game with this character is getting up close and personal, right smack dab in the middle of the fight. You want your Barbarian to be right up in your enemy's face, where they have to deal with them or walk around them or something, and anyone who tries to walk past your barbarian, you can trigger an opportunity attack and hit them. While your barbarian is standing up there in the middle of the fray, they are providing that 5-foot movement speed bonus to the rest of the party, which will allow those characters to get into their positions and do their jobs more effectively as well. This barbarian is not going to be doing any crazy flashy stuff. You're not going to be calling down lightning bolts from the sky or annihilating entire rooms full of people in one go. But you will be providing a huge amount of tankiness and utility for your party, as well as the strength to complete certain tasks that other party members might not be able to do. You can throw people up onto ledges, throw people off of ledges. There's a bunch of stuff that this barbarian can do that's not as flashy as a wizard, but still very, very important. And to reiterate this, do not underestimate how strong your rage ability is. Without rage, you're just a dumbass in a loincloth. With rage, you are one of the tankiest characters possibly imaginable in this game. Now, get in there and crack some skulls, friend. Ladies and gents, that's going to do it for this beginner build. Did you guys learn anything? Did I mess anything up? What other single class beginner builds would you like to see covered? How did I get here? Does anyone know who I am? Join us on the Discord if you want to hang out with some like-minded nerds and talk about games, movies, and comic books. And as always, travelers, I am glad you got to see me. Do your best to stay alive out there. Until next time, see ya.
What's this? Something weak, something tender. Won't even have to chew you before I feed you to my son. Soft meat.